For a month, I gave an AI agent the keys to my calendar, full read and write access, the ability to create events, move things around, and see everything on my schedule, and the results were not what I expected. Not because it was some magic productivity transformation, and not because it was a disaster. It was messier and more interesting than either of those stories. There were genuine wins I kept, there were failures I did not see coming, including one that almost caused a real problem. And by the end of the month, I had a much clearer sense of exactly where an agent with write access earns its place and where it absolutely does not. So this is not a review of a specific app. This is an honest account of what happens when you actually hand an agent this kind of access and live with it for a month. The setup I started with, before I describe what happened, let me be specific about the setup, because the details matter a lot here. I gave the agent read and write access to my calendar. That means it could see every event, create new ones, edit existing ones, and move things around. I also gave it a short list of rules written in plain language. Keep work blocks protected unless I explicitly say otherwise. Never schedule anything before 8 in the morning or after 9 at night. When in doubt about timing, ask before writing. I connected it to my messaging setup so I could talk to it in plain sentences throughout the day. Something like, "Can you block 2 hours tomorrow afternoon for this?" And it would find the gap and create the event. That was the intended use. The reality got more complicated from there, and I am glad it did, because the complications taught me more than the wins did. What actually worked well? Let me start with the wins, because there were real ones. The first thing that worked was drafting events from messy text. I would paste in an email or a message that said something like, "Let us catch up sometime next week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday around lunchtime, about the project handover," and the agent would pull out who it was with, the rough timing, and the topic, and give me a draft event ready to confirm. No copy and pasting fields, no translating from vague human language to calendar entry. It just handled that translation step. This sounds small, and it is small, but I do it constantly. Getting a clean draft from raw text is a real-time save, and it was reliable almost every time. The friction of turning a message into a calendar entry used to be just annoying enough that I would sometimes do it later and then forget. That problem basically disappeared. Finding open slots without the back and forth. The second thing that worked well was slot finding. I would say I need 2 hours of focus time sometime Thursday, or find me a gap Friday afternoon for a long call, and it would look at what was already on the calendar and come back with 2 or 3 concrete options. Not book anything, just tell me where the space was. This sounds like something a calendar app already does, and you are right that some of them have this built in, but the agent did it conversationally, and the conversational layer turned out to matter more than I expected. I could say, "Not that one. I have a thing around 3 that usually runs long," and it would adjust without me going back into the app. The back and forth to find a slot used to take me several steps. This collapsed it to a short conversation, and that compression is genuinely useful when you are in the middle of something else. Building prep summaries before meetings. The third win was prep summaries. The night before a busy day, or an hour before a specific meeting, I could ask it to pull together what was on the calendar and give me a short brief. Who is on the call? What was the topic I wrote in the description? Is there anything from earlier in the week that connects to it? It was not doing any deep research or pulling from outside the calendar. It was just reading what was already there and organizing it into a readable summary, and that was enough. The value was not that it knew more than me. The value was that it read the calendar, so I did not have to scroll through it myself at the moment I was trying to switch contexts. It saved the mental load of doing that scan at a moment when I was already trying to shift gears and get my head into the next thing. Nudging me about conflicts and overlaps. The fourth thing that worked was the conflict nudges. Before it would create anything, it would check and flag if there was an overlap. You have a call at 2, this would land right on top of it. Do you want me to move it to 3 instead? This is again something calendar apps do, but only if you try to create the event yourself inside the app. The agent would catch it even when I was asking casually in a message and had not thought to check. A couple of times it saved me from a collision I would not have noticed until it was too late. The nudging felt genuinely useful and not annoying. It was doing the checking step I would have done anyway, just doing it faster and more consistently than I do when I am busy or distracted. What went wrong, honestly? Now the failures, because this is where it gets interesting. The first and most significant one was a near double booking. I had asked the agent to find a time for a call with a contact and told it to go ahead and block the slot. What I did not remember in that moment was that I had a standing informal commitment on that day that I had never actually put in the calendar. The agent did not know about it because it was not there. It looked at the calendar, saw a clear slot, and booked the call. I found out about the conflict 2 days before the meeting when I happened to be talking to the other person about something else. Nothing catastrophic happened. I moved the call and explained the clash, but the near miss was a clear reminder that the agent only knows what is in the calendar, and my actual schedule has a whole layer of soft commitments, habits, and recurring informal things that live only in my head. The agent could not see that layer, and it had no way to know that layer existed. Misreading what I actually meant. The second failure was subtler but more frequent. Misreading what I actually wanted. I would say something like, block tomorrow morning for deep work, and it would create a 2-hour block from 8 to 10, but I meant the full morning, meaning until noon. Or I would say, push that to later in the week, and it would move an event to Thursday when I was thinking Friday, because I had something Wednesday I had forgotten about. These were not catastrophic errors. They were small misreadings that I then had to go back and correct. But they happened often enough to add friction instead of removing it. The agent was interpreting my shorthand too literally in some cases, and not literally enough in others, and the inconsistency made it harder to develop a clean mental model of how to phrase things to it reliably. I kept adjusting my language, and it kept surprising me anyway. Being too eager to schedule things. The third failure was eagerness. Early in the month, I had turned on a mode where the agent could create events without asking me to confirm each one. I did this because the confirmation prompts felt slow and clunky when I just wanted something blocked quickly. That was a mistake. Over about a week, the agent created 7 events without me explicitly signing off on each one. Most of them were fine. 2 of them I would not have approved if it had asked. One was a recurring block it set up from an offhand comment I made about wanting to get some exercise in before work. I had not meant that as an instruction to build a standing weekly calendar event. It heard me say it and went ahead and created one. That was the moment I turned confirmations back on, and I left them on for the rest of the month without exception. The trust tuning that fixed it. Those failures led to one central adjustment that made the rest of the month much smoother. I set a firm rule that the agent must propose and confirm before it writes anything to the calendar. No silent edits, no inferred permissions, no acting on an offhand comment. If it wanted to create or change anything at all, it had to show me exactly what it planned to do and wait for me to say yes before it touched anything. This slowed down the interaction a little. There was one more step on every action, but the trade was worth it completely. When I could see the proposed event before it was created, I caught the small misreadings before they landed on my actual schedule. I stayed in control of what was scheduled, and I stopped having the anxious feeling of not being entirely sure what was on my calendar anymore. That feeling, not knowing whether the calendar fully reflects reality, was the most draining part of the early phase, and it went away almost immediately once I enforced the confirm rule. The verdict after a month. So after a month, here is what I kept and what I killed. I kept the drafting. Pasting in a raw message and getting a clean event draft back is genuinely useful, and I still do it several times a week. I kept the slot finding. Conversational back and forth to locate a gap in the calendar is faster than doing it manually inside the app. I kept the prep summaries. A quick brief before a busy day or a specific meeting is a small but real win and costs me almost nothing to get. And I kept the conflict checks with the firm rule that I always see the proposed action before it is confirmed. What I killed was autonomous writing. The agent no longer creates or edits calendar events without me confirming the exact action first. It became an assistant that drafts and proposes. It is not an agent that acts on its own. That is the right division for this use case, and I think it is right for most use cases involving a personal schedule. The general lesson about agents and write access, the experience made something concrete that I had been thinking about only vaguely before this month. Write access is a fundamentally different trust level than read access. An agent that reads your calendar and tells you things is low risk. If it misreads something, you get a slightly off summary and you ignore it or correct it with no real cost. An agent that writes to your calendar can create real schedule conflicts that have consequences in the physical world. Meetings you show up to at the wrong time, commitments you make that clash with things you forgot to log. The cost of an error with write access is not just a wrong answer on a screen, it is something that can affect other people and your actual day. So the level of oversight you keep over write access needs to match that higher cost. For me, that means propose and confirm. Every time, no exceptions, no shortcuts. Agents work best when the scope is tight, and the deeper thing that comes out of this is that agents work best when the scope is tight and the checkable surface is clear. The drafting job worked because I could read the draft in 2 seconds and know instantly if it was right. The slot finding worked because I could glance at the proposed options and pick one. The autonomous writing failed because the gap between what I said and what it did was invisible until after it had already acted on the calendar. Narrow scope, fast checking, visible actions, that is the pattern, and it applies well beyond calendar management. Wherever you are thinking about giving an agent write access to something that matters in your life or your work, build the confirmation step in before you need it, not after you have already had the near miss that teaches you the same lesson. So that is the honest month. The agent made calendar drafting and slot finding noticeably faster, and those wins are real and I kept them. It also created a near double booking from a gap in my own calendar hygiene, and it scheduled a weekly workout event I never asked for. The fix was one rule that should probably have been there from day one. Propose before you write, confirm before you change anything. If you keep that rule, the drafting and the prep work are genuinely worth having. If you skip it because the confirmation step feels like friction, you will find out why it matters soon enough. If you want more honest, practical breakdowns of what it is actually like to run AI agents in real day-to-day work, subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.